My daughter came home, crying from a party the next day. The district called her mom. I didn't plan to write this. I'm not someone who usually shares online, but the memory keeps looping in my head, and the more I try to let it go, the heavier it feels. So here it is. My daughter Lily is 13. She's the kind of girl who still asks me to check on her before bed, even though she knows she's too old for that now. Gentle, thoughtful, not the loud center of attention. When she got invited to a birthday party by Taylor, one of the popular girls in her grade, she lit up like she'd been given a golden ticket. We spent an hour picking a gift together, a small makeup set, and Lily wrote a card with her careful handwriting, erasing and rewriting so many times you'd think she was crafting a speech. Saturday came, and she got dressed up, asked me if she looked too much. I told her she looked beautiful. She smiled nervous, but hopeful. Taylor's house was in one of those shiny new neighborhoods, SUVs in the driveway, a fake seasonal wreath on the door. When Taylor's mom, Brittany, opened the door, she smiled too wide, but her eyes didn't really look at me. I recognized her from fundraisers, the type of woman who runs the show and makes sure everyone knows it. I waved from the car, and she waved back. 3 hours later, Lily came home. She didn't say a word, just walked straight to her room, shoulders stiff. My stomach dropped. I waited a few minutes before going up. She was sitting on her bed, still in her dress size red. When I asked what happened, she just whispered, "Can we not go back there?" Then she handed me the gift bag she had brought. Inside was nothing but a folded piece of pink notebook paper. In looping gel pen letters, it said, "Maybe if your mom wasn't so embarrassing, you'd get invited more." I swear in that moment, it felt like swallowing fire. Not because of the insult to me, I've been called worse, but because my child had been mocked simply for being mine. I kissed her forehead and told her she'd never have to go back there again. She nodded, turned her face toward the wall. That night, I couldn't sleep. By 11, I called Brittany. She answered like I was just another mom calling to chat. When I explained, read the note aloud, there was a pause. Then she laughed. A sharp, dry laugh that made my chest tighten. "Teen girls are savage," she said. "Get over it." I asked if she had any idea who wrote it. She chuckled again. "Who knows? Maybe Lily misunderstood. You moms take this stuff so seriously. It's just a joke. Don't blow it up into something it's not." Then she hung up. I sat there in the kitchen staring at the phone. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was just cold. Because what she didn't realize is that I know exactly how the system works. I don't scream in parking lots. I don't beg for kindness from people who think cruelty is funny. She laughed at my daughter's pain. And in that moment, she had no idea she had just handed me the one thing I never ignore a reason. Brittany had no idea who she was talking to. She thought I was just another mom she could brush off with a fake laugh and a dismissive comment. What she didn't know, and what I wasn't about to remind her of that night, is that I've spent over a decade working in education compliance. I know every line of the district handbook. I know what's allowed, what isn't, and exactly how to write a complaint that no one can ignore. So instead of screaming into the phone or crying myself to sleep, I waited. I let the anger cool into something sharper, something I could actually use. I told myself I wouldn't act out of spite, I'd act out of precision. The first thing I did was start digging. Brittany wasn't exactly discreet. Her name popped up on every PTA flyer, every community outreach post, every so-called mentorship night she ran for middle school girls. She had positioned herself as the queen bee of school moms, hosting backyard mixers, off-campus parties, even selling her own confidence workshops under the thin disguise of school community events. At first glance, it looked harmless. But I noticed things. The school logo on flyers for events the school had never sanctioned. Distribution lists pulled from school databases. And worst of all, patterns of exclusion, always the same girls getting invited, always the same ones being quietly left out. Families like mine, kids like Lily. Do you know what that looks like to a district's legal team? Liability. A massive red flag. If a child gets hurt at one of those events or harassed, or like my daughter humiliated, the school could be implicated even though they never approved the event. That kind of blurred line is every administrator's nightmare. So I began building a file. Screenshots of every flyer with the crest on it. Copies of emails she sent from the school mailing list. Snippets from the parent Facebook group where she used phrases like, "We want families who fit the right vibe." Vibe. That word alone made me sick. I didn't act immediately. I waited a few days, let the file stack up until it spoke for itself. And then, on a quiet Tuesday morning, I submitted 2 separate complaints. One went to the compliance officer at Lily's school detailing the misuse of logos, mailing lists, and official resources. The second went straight to the district ethics department, anonymous but thorough, outlining a pattern of exclusion and unsanctioned activity that directly affected vulnerable students. And then I waited. 2 weeks later, the district sent out a staff-wide memo. No names, no direct accusations, but anyone who'd been paying attention knew exactly who it was about. The email reminded all parents and staff that no school logos could be used for non-sanctioned events, that all student gatherings tied to school names had to be inclusive, and that violations could result in formal disciplinary action. Brittany's kingdom had just been given a demolition notice. But she didn't know it yet. Not really. What she did know was that the walls were closing in because the very next day she went on Facebook. And what she posted told me everything I needed to know about the cracks in her perfect image. Brittany's response was exactly what I expected, loud, polished, and dripping with denial. The morning after the memo went out, she posted a long rant in the Middle School Parents United Facebook group. 700 words of self-praise, veiled jabs, and victimhood dressed as confidence. It started with some people just can't handle when others try to build community. Jealousy is an ugly thing. I read it twice, not because it surprised me, but because I wanted to take in every line of her unraveling. She insisted she was the only parent putting in real effort, that she had sacrificed time and energy to create opportunities for our girls, and that the backlash was nothing more than envy. She even claimed the district memo had nothing to do with her calling it a routine reminder. But the cracks were showing. Within hours, the comments section split down the middle. Some parents left half-hearted supportive emojis, the kind you post when you're too scared to be the first to jump ship. But others quiet ones, the ones who had sat in the background for years, finally started speaking up. I remember when my daughter came home crying from one of your confidence workshops. One mom wrote, "She told me she wasn't picked to participate because she didn't fit the image." Was that community too? Another comment. "My son was uninvited from your movie night because you said it was girls only." But then I found out other boys went. Which rules apply and to whom? Each comment was like a thread being pulled loose from her carefully woven reputation. And the more she tried to reply, the more she revealed. Defensive clipped responses. Gaslighting phrases like, "I don't remember that happening," or "Maybe your child misunderstood." But here's the thing. People were tired of being quiet. The stories poured out. Little by little, the facade cracked. One mother privately messaged me that night. She said, "I've been waiting years for someone to call her out. Thank you." Another confessed her daughter had once been told by Brittany to dress better if she wanted to be invited again. I realized then that I wasn't alone. I had started the avalanche, but the weight crushing Brittany wasn't just mine. It belonged to every parent who had smiled through her fake charm while watching their child be quietly pushed aside. Still, she didn't quit. Not yet. The more cornered she felt, the harder she fought to spin the story. She didn't know the worst was still coming, not from me, not even from the district, but from the very program she thought made her untouchable. Because if the Facebook rant was the crack the Empower Her Girls Collective was the explosion waiting to happen. The first time I saw the flyer for Brittany's Empower Her Girls Collective, I almost laughed. Pink pastel borders, inspirational quotes, scattered like sprinkles, and at the bottom, in small italicized print, in partnership with Brookfield Middle School. Except it wasn't. The crest printed at the top wasn't a cute clip art logo. It was the official district seal, the one pulled directly from their website. I knew, because I checked the metadata on the PDF. She had downloaded it herself 2 months earlier. The more I stared at it, the angrier I became. This wasn't just a mom hosting craft nights. She was charging parents $150 a month for mentorship sessions that included journaling photo shoots and confidence coaching. And she marketed it as if the school stood behind her. That was a line she couldn't legally cross. See, once you slap a public school's crest on something, it changes everything. Liability, licensing, background checks. IRS oversight if you're collecting tuition. Brittany thought she was untouchable. What she didn't realize was that she had left a paper trail for someone like me, someone who knew exactly where to send it. So I built another file, screenshots of the flyer, payment receipts parents had shared in the group chat, copies of her Instagram page where she posted photos of underage girls in coordinated outfits, all tagged with hashtags like #empowerment and #future leaders. And the worst part, she had used some of those girls' images without their parents' consent. I didn't even need to embellish. I just forwarded everything to the district's risk and compliance office. Then I filed a second report through the state's unauthorized youth program tip line. Yes, that exists. And yes, they take it seriously. It didn't take long. 2 weeks later, a district-wide email went out. Parents are reminded that no off-campus youth program may use school branding names or logos without written approval. Any program found in violation will be subject to suspension and legal review. And in the fine print, there it was. The Empower Her Collective. Named, exposed. The fallout was immediate. Parents who had written checks started demanding refunds. A mom I barely knew cornered me at the grocery store to vent. My daughter went once. She came home crying because Brittany told her she wasn't ready for camera days. Like she was auditioning for some brand campaign. She's 12. Another mother said Brittany told her daughter she wasn't girly enough to stay in the group. The girl had been devastated. Within days, the Empower Her Instagram vanished. The website disappeared. Her title as parent coordinator was scrubbed from the school page. And for the first time, Brittany herself stopped posting. But silence doesn't erase a mess. It only makes people wonder what's being hidden. And soon, whispers turned into stories, and stories turned into something no PR stunt could fix. Because once you make money off children's vulnerability, you don't just lose credibility, you invite something much worse, a state investigation. I've worked in policy long enough to know the sound of a real investigation when it's brewing. And sure enough, 3 weeks after I filed those reports, my hunch became reality. It started with an email subject line, FYI, state inquiry initiated. Attached was a public notice from the Office of Child and Youth Services. Someone, maybe me, maybe another parent, maybe several had sent in a complaint about the Empower Her Girls Collective. The allegations operating as an unlicensed youth program, collecting fees without proper registration, and using minors' images in promotional material without parental consent. This wasn't school board politics anymore. This was law. Brittany had treated her little side hustle like a personal brand, funneling payments through Venmo and PayPal. But once you pass a certain threshold in our state, it stops being a hobby. It becomes taxable business income. And if that business involves minors, You're expected to file with child services, submit background checks, and maintain records of consent. She hadn't done any of that? Not once. The news spread quietly at first. A line buried in the district newsletter. A whisper at school pickup. But parents talk, and by the end of the week, it was everywhere. People who once gushed about Brittany's community building were now whispering about fraud liability and lawsuits. Refund requests flooded in. One mom told me she confronted Brittany directly about the $300 she'd paid for 2 months of sessions. Brittany snapped back. It's non-refundable. We already did activities. That mom forwarded the text to the district. Another nail in the coffin. The school counselor added her own piece. One of the girls, ironically, someone who had sided with Taylor at the infamous party, confessed during a session that Brittany assigned roles to girls at events based on how marketable they looked. Who got to pass out crafts, who got to be models for Instagram, who got to sit in the confidence circle. All of it documented, all of it ugly. By the following week, Brittany's name was toxic. She was suspended from every parent-facing committee. The Empower Her account was deleted. Parents were quietly advised to avoid contact while the state finished its review. And then came the real blow. A friend at the district forwarded me a note. Brittany's name had been added to the regional Do Not Approve list, a blacklist passed between counties to quietly block certain individuals from holding volunteer or leadership roles in public schools. It's not public, but it's permanent. She thought she was untouchable. Instead, she had become radioactive. But she didn't disappear gracefully. No, Brittany wasn't done. Because when people like her lose control, they don't apologize. They lash out. The night Brittany's accounts went dark, I thought it might finally be over. I thought maybe she would retreat, lick her wounds, and stay out of sight until the state finished their work. But Brittany never went quietly. It started with an unknown number. Just one line. You think you're better. You ruined year to my daughter's year. Hope it was worth it. No signature, no pleasantries. But I didn't need either. I knew who it was. I didn't respond. Not because I wasn't furious, I was. But because responding would have given her what she craved, proof. She still had my attention. I left it sitting there on my screen, glowing like an ember. A few days later, another text came. Funny how fast reputations crumble. Be careful, yours doesn't. This time, I laughed out loud. My reputation, I had nothing to hide. I hadn't run a fake mentorship program, hadn't pocketed cash from parents while branding kids like products. All I had done was hold a mirror up to her. If she hated the reflection, that was her problem. Still, I showed the text to Nate. He frowned, asked if I wanted to block her. I shook my head. No, I said. I want her words on record. If she keeps pushing, I'll have enough to add harassment to her list of troubles. But Brittany wasn't just texting me. She started posting vague rants on her private Facebook, the kind only mutual acquaintances could see. Things like, some people thrive on tearing down what they could never build, or jealousy is the ugliest disease. Her little army of loyal moms chimed in with heart emojis and comments like, you'll rise again, queen. What they didn't realize was that for every one of them, 3 more parents were quietly messaging me with their own stories. Tales of daughters excluded from parties moms belittled in group chats, kids crying in bedrooms because Brittany decided who was enough. She wasn't just losing her image, she was losing her mask. The real turning point came one evening when my daughter Lily came home holding another folded note. Not cruel this time, but apologetic. I should have spoken up. You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry. Same handwriting as the first cruel note at the party, just neater, slower. Whoever wrote it had finally realized the damage they'd done. That's when I knew the tide had fully turned. Brittany could send me all the texts she wanted, but the power she thrived on social control, intimidation, silence was gone. People weren't scared anymore. But Brittany, she wasn't finished fighting. And her next move would take things beyond petty texts and into something darker. Brittany disappeared from school committees, from the parent volunteer lists, even from the Instagram accounts she once curated like they were glossy magazines. For a few weeks, it was quiet, almost too quiet. I thought maybe she had finally accepted defeat. Then the whisper started. A few parents in a neighboring district reached out to me privately. Brittany was trying to start over, new school, new branding, same game. This time, she called it Rise and Radiate Youth Society. Same pitch, empowerment for girls' mentorship community. Only now, she was careful to avoid using the school crest. But careful wasn't enough. One of the parents who emailed me had once lived in our town. She recognized Brittany, immediately searched her old group's name, and found everything: the flyers, the complaints, the state notice. She forwarded it all to the new school board. Her application was denied. Quietly, efficiently, without debate. They wanted no part of her. Brittany must have felt the walls closing in. She pulled Taylor from the new school halfway through the semester. Rumors swirled. Some said they moved out of state. Others claimed she was homeschooling. But wherever she went, the stain followed. Reputations don't reset. They travel. Meanwhile, the state inquiry into Empower Her Girls Collective deepened. Not just licensing violations, but finances. Venmo and PayPal records. Unreported income, parents who wanted refunds. Even small claims suits. It was like pulling a single loose thread from a sweater and watching the whole thing unravel. The more she tried to hold on to her empire of curated perfection, the more obvious it became that it had been built on exclusion, manipulation, and ego. And here's the irony. None of this would have happened if she had just handled one moment differently. If she had listened when I called about the note. If she had said, I'm so sorry this happened. I'll find out who wrote it. Lily didn't deserve that. That's all it would have taken. A single act of humility. Instead, she laughed. She mocked my daughter's pain. She dismissed it like a joke. And that laugh, that one cruel sound, was the beginning of her end. The storm eventually quieted, but not in the way most people expect. There wasn't a big apology, no tearful reconciliation, no moment where the villains realized their mistakes and begged forgiveness. Instead, there was absence, silence. Brittany's name vanished from every corner of our district. At school events, no one mentioned her anymore, like erasing her existence was easier than acknowledging the wreckage she left behind. The Empower. Her accounts were deleted. The flyers disappeared. Even her so-called friends stopped pretending they didn't know. But Lily, she carried something different. She didn't cry about the no anymore, but I noticed how she paused before RSVPing to a classmate's party. How she triple-checked if her two closest friends were going before she agreed to anything. How she asked me quietly, "Do you think they actually want me there?" That's what stuck. Not the scandal, not the fallout, but the seed of doubt planted in a child who had only wanted to belong. I gave her justice. I couldn't give her back her innocence. And me, I changed too. I wasn't the nice mom anymore, the one who brought extra snacks to every soccer game or signed up first for bake sales. Now when I walked into a room, I saw the hesitation in other parents' eyes. I overheard the whispers. "Don't cross her. She knows people. She doesn't forget." They said it like a warning. I took it as a compliment because this wasn't about being vengeful. It was about drawing a line in the sand, about showing that some of us don't look away when children are humiliated. Some of us remember. Some of us fight, but not with screaming matches or petty gossip. We fight by making sure the people who cause harm can't keep hiding behind curated smiles and fake community titles. Months later, I got a voicemail from someone in the district office, a woman I'd worked with years ago. Her voice was soft, almost conspiratorial. She said, "I know you didn't sign your name, but I know you're writing. Just wanted to say, well done. I didn't call back. I didn't need to." Because this was never about praise. It was about making sure that when Brittany Miller looked in the mirror, she saw the truth. Not the polished parent leader she pretended to be, but the woman who broke little girls' spirits for fun and finally faced consequences for it. Justice has a way of echoing. Sometimes it's loud public firings, viral scandals, headlines splashed across screens. But other times, it's quieter, a slow unraveling. You only notice when enough threads are gone. For Brittany, it was both. The district's actions were one thing. Her name had been flagged across 3 neighboring counties, added to a quiet list that schools keep behind closed doors. It isn't public, but it's permanent. It meant every time she tried to volunteer, apply, or step back into the world of school politics, there would be a quiet no. Not with explanation, just a door that never opened again. Then came the lawsuits. At least one parent whose daughter had been excluded from Brittany's mentorship club filed a claim for fees they paid for events that never happened. Small claims court. Word spread that she settled quickly, too embarrassed to drag it out. Money slipped through her fingers faster than she could control. But the part that hit hardest wasn't financial, it was personal. Taylor, her daughter, didn't return to school. Rumors swirled online classes, homeschooling, maybe even moving districts. I saw the look in Lily's eyes when she heard the whispers at lunch. Part of her felt pity, part of her felt vindicated, and part of her, the quietest part, simply understood. Because when adults play cruel games, it's always the kids who pay first. 6 months later, another twist came through. Whispers of the PTA grapevine. Brittany's husband filed for divorce. Someone said he'd finally seen what she was like. When the spotlight dimmed, controlling, vindictive, unable to handle losing. Whether that was true or just gossip, I don't know. But it fit. The image of her life, once polished and pristine, was cracking everywhere. And here's the irony. It didn't have to be this way. All she had to do on that first night when I called her was acknowledge the pain. A simple, "I'm sorry this happened." I'll find out who wrote the note and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's it. That's all it would have taken to stop the dominoes from falling. But she didn't. She laughed. She mocked my daughter's pain. She dismissed it as a joke. And because of that choice, everything she built, her image, her influence, her reputation, collapsed. People often ask, was it worth it? The whispers carry that question like a dare. Here's my answer, yes. Not because I wanted to ruin her, but because I wanted Lily to see that silence isn't the only option. That some mothers fight back. That cruelty, disguised as teen girls being savage, isn't something we brush off. It's something we burn down. The price of justice was high, but it wasn't mine to pay. Justice doesn't come clean. It leaves residue on the people who deserved it, and on the ones who delivered it. For Lily, the marks were subtle at first. She stopped going to parties unless one of her 2 closest friends would be there. She double-checked the guest list, always asking in a low voice, "Do you think they actually want me there?" She was only 14, but already carrying the weight of someone who had seen how fragile belonging can be. I gave her justice, yes, but innocence that I couldn't give back. And me, I changed too. I became something else in the eyes of other parents. Not the nice mom who brings cupcakes to fundraisers, not the one who volunteers for every event. Now I'm the warning whispered at carpool. Don't cross her. She knows people. She doesn't forget. They say it like an insult. I take it as armor. Because here's the truth. Sometimes kindness doesn't protect your children. Sometimes the only thing that protects them is fear. Not their fear. Theirs. The people who think they can laugh at a 13-year-old girl and get away with it. The people who think cruelty is just part of growing up. I hear things now. That Brittany tried to start fresh under a new name in another town. another state. That the new district turned her away the moment they saw her file. That she's still trying to claw back an image that will never be whole again. And yet when people ask me if I feel sorry for her, I pause. Because part of me wants to. After all, her daughter didn't choose this. But then I remember that night, the sound of her laughter on the phone, the way she dismissed Lily's tears as nothing more than teen girls being savage. That's what ended it. Not me, not my file, not the district. Her. Here's what I've learned: some wounds heal and some become lessons. For Lily, the lesson was harsh, that sometimes the cruelty comes not from classmates, but from the adults who should know better. For me, the lesson was, this motherhood is war, and the battlefield isn't always visible. Sometimes it looks like a living room full of laughter where your child doesn't belong. Sometimes it looks like a note written in gel pen designed to cut deeper than any blade. And sometimes it looks like silence. The silence after the storm, when the bully is gone, when your child is safe. But the question lingers. Ask yourself, what would you have done if it was your daughter? Would you have let it slide, hoping time would mend the scar? Or would you have done what I did? Pull every string, dig every receipt, and make sure the woman who laughed at your child's pain could never laugh like that again. Because that's the real ending here. Not closure, not forgiveness, just a mirror. A mirror held up to a woman who thought she could break little girls and walk away clean. And when she looked into it, she saw what she really was. That's what ruined her, not me. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps me share more full story narrations about family boundaries and hidden truths. See you in the next one.